Hi students, today in this video we are going to see the development of the testis. Initially the testis will be developed in the lumbar region of the abdomen. Okay, it's called as gonads. And now initially this will not be called as a testis or ovary. It should be called as a gonad. We have not yet decided the sex. Now here you will be having a tubercle called as genital tubercle. So this is called as genital tubercle and here it is called as gonad. Okay, so what happens? There is a ligament like structure which extends from the lower part of the testis to the genital tubercle. That is called as, we'll put thick structure, that is called as gubernaculum testis. So what is this called? Gubernaculum. This gubernaculum connects the testis or gonad to the genital tubercle. Then what happens? The sex will be determined whether it is XX or XY. If it is XX, it will be transformed into a ovary, and if it is XY, it will be transformed into a testis. Now what happens? This gubernaculum, it's getting shortened. If it is getting shortened, what will happen? This testis is being pulled down. So it is pulling, this because of the shortening of the gubernaculum, it's been pulled down and it is coming down to the genital tubercle. In the genital tubercle, in the males will be transformed into scrotum. Understand? Now the testis is coming down because of the shortening of the gubernaculum, and the testis will be placed, both the testis will be placed inside the scrotum. Left testis and the right testis. So this is because of the shortening of the gubernaculum. Now what happens? The testis initially it is present in the lumbar region. It is present in the lumbar region of the abdomen. So when it comes down, we know well about the layers of the abdomen. So the layers of the abdomen, the posterior most layer is transverse abdominis. The posterior most layer is transverse abdominis, transversalis fascia, and the next layer is the transverse abdominis, and then the previous layer is the internal oblique muscle, and then the last superficial layer is your external oblique. Okay, this is the external oblique muscle, and this is aponeurosis formed by the external oblique. And next, if you turn, the second muscle is internal oblique, and the internal oblique muscle joins with the underlying muscle. You can see the underlying muscle. Next was the next muscle. Beneath that you will be having the transverse abdominis is present here, and you can see the transverse abdominis and the internal oblique, both the muscles, they have some fibers. They are called as arched fibers. You can see nicely the arch. Okay, so you can see the arch formed by the transverse abdominis, internal oblique. Now the aponeurosis of the transverse abdominis and the internal oblique, they join together and forms a tendon called as conjoint tendon. Understand? Okay, so then three layers. So first layer external oblique, second layer is the internal oblique oblique muscle and the aponeurosis, and the third one is transverse abdominis and the aponeurosis of transverse abdominis. Then the last layer is transversalis fascia. Now you see from the abdomen your testis has to descend down. So the testis has to descend down. So how it is going to descend, that we will see. So for example, first from the abdomen it has to pierce the first opening. So who is the first opening? The first opening is a oval opening. So our testis, imagine this is your gubernaculum. The end of the gubernaculum you have the testis. So number one, it is piercing. So when it pierces the transversalis fascia, it forms a oval shaped opening. This oval shaped opening is called as deep inguinal ring. Since it is deep, it is called as deep inguinal ring. It is an oval shaped opening. Next it comes on the path. It need not pierce anything. Already there is an arch. The arch is formed by the transverse abdominis. So it comes below the arch. Then also it has an arch. It comes below the arch of the internal oblique muscle. But then when it comes in front to the external oblique aponeurosis, it has to pierce the external oblique. When it pierces the external oblique, you can see nicely a triangular opening is formed by the piercing of the gubernaculum testis. Okay, the testis and the gubernaculum pierces. So this is how the structure comes out. This is the testis comes out and it enters into the scrotum. So number one, when it pierces the external oblique aponeurosis, it forms a triangular shaped opening, and the triangular shaped opening is formed by the darkened two areas. This is a triangle. This is the superior margin, this is the inferior margin. Superior margin is called as medial crest and the inferior margin is called as lateral crest. The lateral crest is just getting its attachment over the tubercle called pubic tubercle, and the medial crest goes towards the medial side. It is going towards the pubic symphysis. So pubic symphysis, it is coming to the pubic tubercle, and this is the base of the triangle. The base of the triangle is formed by the pubic crest. So this is the triangle. So that's the spermatic cord. This later on the tubercular column is getting shortened, and the structure which is attached to the testis is your spermatic cord. The spermatic cord is lying on the lateral crest. This is the MCQ. This is lying on which crest? Lateral crest. So this is about the superficial ring. It lies just above and lateral to the pubic tubercle. Just above and lateral to the pubic tubercle. This is over. So next you can see the aponeurosis of the muscle, internal oblique muscle, the arch fibers of the internal oblique and the transverse abdominis arch fibers. Then deep inguinal ring is a oval shaped opening present in the fascia transversalis. So you can see the four layers. Now we will see the mechanism, how it is being prevented. The mechanism, how it prevents the hernia. Natural mechanism. When the intra-abdominal pressure is increased, what happens? This superficial inguinal ring. The superficial inguinal ring, when you see from outside, posteriorly you can see a green color. Already I have mentioned the green color is formed by a tendon called as conjoint tendon. The conjoint tendon is formed by the lower fibers of the internal oblique and the aponeurosis of transverse abdominis. You can see both aponeuroses join together and forms the conjoint tendon. So this ring is guarded by means protected by a structure behind that. That is your conjoint tendon. You can see it clearly. It is seen as a green color. The green color thing is conjoint tendon. So the superficial inguinal ring is guarded by or protected by the conjoint tendon, and the same thing deep inguinal ring is guarded by. So the deep inguinal ring is placed here. So that is placed here. So who is lying above? Transverse abdominis muscle and the internal oblique muscle. These two muscles, they form the protection in front. So deep inguinal ring is situated in the deep place. So it is protected anteriorly by the transverse abdominis and internal oblique. So you have to write these two factors. And then third is called as shutter mechanism. It looks like a shutter, right? The arch fibers of internal oblique and the transverse abdominis. So they form a shutter. So whenever the increased intra-abdominal pressure, there is pressure, what happens? These fibers, they will come down and constrict and close the opening. These fibers, they contract and come down and close the opening. This is called as shutter mechanism. The next mechanism is called as slit valve mechanism. See, look at this. This valve, this opening acts as a slit, and this slit, when the intra-abdominal pressure is increased, these two crura will oppose. Oppose means they will close the opening. So it is called a slit valve mechanism. So number one is slit valve mechanism. So while writing, you have to mention number one is slit valve mechanism. This is by the crura of the superficial inguinal ring. And then number two is the shutter mechanism, formed by the arched fibers of internal oblique and the transverse abdominis. So you have to write the shutter mechanism. So I will write the shutter here, shutter mechanism, because of the arched fibers. And then third one is the garden. Okay, and the superficial ring is guarded by the conjoint tendon, and this three. And the fourth is the deep inguinal ring is guarded by transverse abdominis and internal oblique. So four mechanisms already we have written: shutter, slit valve, and superficial ring is guarded by, and deep ring is guarded by. Last one is the canal is not a straight canal, it is an oblique canal. See, it starts from the upper part, again it is coming down, and again it is coming down medially. Okay, see, that's why it is an oblique. So the canal is oblique. So slit valve, shutter, and superficial ring is guarded by, and the fourth is deep ring is guarded by, and then the canal is oblique, obliquity of the canal. In newborn child, the canal is transversely placed. Both the deep superficial inguinal ring and the deep inguinal ring is just in front and behind, and obliquity of the canal. And the sixth is the ball valve mechanism. Ball valve mechanism. What is ball valve mechanism? When this is coming, no, this one, this testis, when it comes out through the sorry, two arches, right? When it comes like this, when it crosses the internal oblique, few fibers from the internal oblique, they just come and it lies on the spermatic cord. So few fibers, they come and it lies on the spermatic cord. So we'll draw this fibers lying on the spermatic cord. This muscle which is lying on the spermatic cord is called as cremaster muscle. So cremaster muscle is derived from the internal oblique. So when it crosses the canal, so it takes few fibers from the internal oblique, that is called as cremaster muscle and fascia. So cremaster muscle and fascia are here. So whenever the increased intra-abdominal, there is increased intra-abdominal pressure, the cremaster muscle is getting tightened and it closes the canal. So it is called as ball. Ball is testis. The testis responsible muscle is cremaster. So when the cremaster is getting contracted, the ball of the testis comes and closes the opening. So it is called as ball valve mechanism. Ball valve mechanism. And then lastly, the hormone testosterone also plays a very minimal role. Okay, testosterone hormones. Okay, so totally 7 factors, they give the natural mechanism of prevention of hernia in your body. So this is about the inguinal canal. So the inguinal canal, when you write, you have to write about the roof, floor, everything. So the floor is formed by the inguinal ligament and the roof is formed by, obviously, by the fibers of the internal oblique and the transverse abdominis. They form the roof. This is the canal, right? So this is the canal and here is the inguinal ligament bottom. So the floor is formed by the inguinal ligament and the roof is formed by the arch fibers. The anterior wall is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis and medially external oblique aponeurosis and laterally by the internal oblique muscle and the transverse abdominis muscle laterally. These are all anterior wall. What I am talking is anterior wall. So anterior wall, medially it is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis and laterally by the internal oblique and the transverse abdominis muscle. And the posterior wall, now we will take the posterior wall. Posterior wall is formed by the fascia transversalis and in the front it is forming the laterally. Medially, who is forming the posterior wall? This conjoint tendon. This is the conjoint tendon which forms the posterior wall medially. Understood? So I will write here, the roof is formed by the arched fibers of internal oblique plus transverse abdominis and the floor is formed by the inguinal ligament and the anterior wall is formed by medial part is formed by the external oblique aponeurosis and the lateral part is formed by the internal oblique muscle and the transverse abdominis muscle, because these two muscles, they take its origin from the lateral part of the inguinal ligament. So posterior wall is formed by the yellow color posterior wall. So posterior wall is formed by the fascia transversalis laterally and medially by what? Conjoint tendon. Already I explained, conjoint tendon is formed by the aponeurosis of transverse abdominis and internal oblique aponeurosis. So this is how we have to write for the essay. Roof, floor, anterior wall, posterior wall, and the mechanisms already I have explained, and the contents are, what will you write the contents? Already I told you, in males spermatic cord and ilioinguinal nerve. In females you should write, in females, round ligament of uterus. Instead of spermatic cord you have to write round ligament of uterus and then ilioinguinal nerve. That's all. Say over. And then extra points you have to write about, I will talk about the hernia in the next video. That is a clinical application we are supposed to write.